Okay, good weekend to everyone. We're doing our final installation for CPF, all right? And we're going to talk about the biggest problem with CPF. So it's going to be a very exciting way to end the series, okay? And what's my motivation for doing this? Haven actually launched a CPF Playbook, and conflict declaration, I have an introducer arrangement with Haven. So if you sign up under the link that I provide on this YouTube channel, I will receive a small commission, right? Based on the amount that you spend with the company. All right, but I'm really doing this out of passion because Haven doesn't pay me for the videos that I create. Okay. Now, that being said, if you want conflict-free independent financial advice, you can use the link below to sign up for a consultation. Okay, so let's dive right into what we're going to talk about. Okay, now before I actually begin and review to everybody what I think the biggest problem with CPF is, to illustrate my point, I'm going to ask three big questions that CPF members might be wondering for themselves. Okay, and as we go through these questions, hopefully we'll learn a little bit about the CPF system and what the biggest problem is. Okay, so the first question, okay, how to make a property pledge to withdraw more money from the CPF? Now, to understand this question, you need to understand that when you hit 55 years old, CPF will keep $213,000 in today's dollars, right? And they will let you withdraw the rest. So $213,000 will then be pumped into your CPF retirement account, and you can withdraw the rest. Okay. All right. Now, what people might be less aware of is that if you're willing to make a property pledge, you can withdraw more money from your CPF. In other words, you only need to leave $106,500 in your CPF. You can withdraw the rest. All right. But how do we actually make a property pledge? Right? We know that we make a property pledge, we keep less money in the CPF. How do we do that? Right? The answer is actually a little bit complicated. You have to go to the CPF center with the co-owner of the property, and you need a bank consent, and CPF might also ask for a valuation report on your property, right, to make sure that you have enough money to pay the remaining amount of mortgage. Otherwise, they might still want to reserve more money in the CPF system. Okay. Now, more importantly, complications may arise later as there will be a charge on your property. So should you sell it in the future, the lawyer needs to do some paperwork to somehow eliminate that charge. And there might be some complication, but a significant amount of the sales proceeds from the property might have to go back to the CPF. Okay? So this is one aspect that I think a lot of citizens need to be aware of. It's not that the government wants to keep $213,000 in the CPF account. If you're willing to pledge your property and you have no intention of selling it within your lifetime, then perhaps you can leave less money in the CPF because you don't have to pay rent, right? You own your property, so I guess the CPF board feels that they're a lot more comfortable with you taking out your sums. Okay, so that's the first question, right? Probably very practical for the people who are listening to me or tuned into this video. Let's move on to the next question. The next question is posed to me moments ago by a student who is very confused about this thing known as the $37,740 top-up cap for the CPF. So the question is, if I've topped up, for example, $12,000 in a particular year, right? Can I just find $25,740 and top it up to the CPF, right? Would they allow me to do so? Or what will happen is that the CPF will push the money back to me, right? Because it goes above and beyond the $12,000, right? Now, to answer this question, which is actually very complicated, we need to sort of understand what is the motion, what is the motivation behind CPF top-ups? And for me, what I teach my students is that CPF takes a significant chunk of your earnings every month, right? The only way for you to believe that it is actually worth putting in more money into CPF, to me, it's not so much the 2.5 and the 4% interest rate that you get, right? For me, I want to see tax relief, which means that if I were to put up, for example, $8,000 into my special account, I expect my income to be lowered by $8,000 by the tax authorities, so that if my tax bracket is very high, I can get tax savings, right? So as it turns out, $37,740, you can top up the rest based on your own initiative, okay? But if you are an earned income employee, right, the additional amounts that you top up will not result in tax relief, okay? If you are self-employed like me, I can top up to 37% of my earned income that I declare to the tax authorities while getting tax relief, or 37,740, right? Whichever is lower, right? So I did spend some time talking my student out of contributing it into the CPF, given that he's already learned how to build a dividends portfolio and he's got a fairly decent dividend income portfolio. Why not put it in the dividend portfolio and have the cash actually come in every year for you to actually deal with your regular expenses, right? So in all cases, what I do recommend is try to resort to the retirement sum top-up scheme, RSTU. Put $8,000 into your CPF SA, and then you can put $8,000 into your MediSave account every year to max out your tax relief. Okay, so that will result in tax relief, and RSTU, this $16,000 pool is separate from the $37,000 tax relief that you have. All right, so for high earning people, this could lead to a very substantial amount of tax savings every year. Okay, so I hope this will give you a certain idea of how the CPF top-up can work. All right, so you can top up to 37,740, but the question is, why do you want to do that when you're not likely to end up with getting tax relief? Okay, yeah, max out your tax relief. Okay, yeah. Question 3. What is my CPF life income after I reach 65? Okay, the ebook has a very useful rule of thumb. Simply take the amount of money you have in your retirement account at the age of 55, and then you divide it by 120 for men and 132 for women to determine how much income you can get, right? So men will get more than women, but the reason that is the case is because women live longer than men. Okay, so it's not sexism, it's just data science. Okay, now the problem with this rule of thumb is that this is contingent on lifespan being the same after 10 years. Now, yesterday, I attended the NDP rally for Prime Minister Wong, and he said that the growth in Singaporeans aged 100 and above has gone up by quite a bit for the past 10 years. So Singaporeans are living longer, and so this 120 denominator is not going to remain constant. When, if I live long enough to produce CPF videos 10 years down the road, this 120, my guess is likely to be increased, right? It's likely to be increased. Maybe for men to be 130, for women to be 140 in the future. Okay, it is also affected by interest rates. So the fact of the matter is, no one knows what the income is going to be from CPF-Life when you hit 65 years old. Okay, so I think that is the bottom line, and it's not the fault of any authorities. The fact that this is an annuity, and annuity has to be priced when you actually buy it, right? So you buy it at the age of 55, so you will only know maybe when you hit 55 years old, and even if you do, right, even if you are aware of the amortization rate, the big question mark is, well, what about inflation? Okay, so even if you can come up with this divisor of 120, and there is a certain amount of certainty that you will get a minimum amount, right? Inflation will make sure that whatever the amounts are, translating it to actual everyday goods is going to be a very big question mark. Okay? Yeah. And so I have actually prepared a bonus question for you. And like many Singaporeans, I really enjoyed the National Day Parade rally last night. Okay, by the time this video comes out, it will be about a week ago. All right. And what PM Wong did this year is he actually flashed a Maths Olympiad question to all Singaporeans, right? Yeah, and he says that he doesn't understand the question, but AI could solve it. And I was thinking that I suspect SM Lee to be able to understand the question because SM Lee is maybe for his generation one of the top mathematicians of his era. Okay. All right. So after reading the ebook, I actually have a very difficult CPF question, which sort of gives me this idea. Maybe the CPF board should work with the Institute of Financial Literacy to have a CPF Olympiad where you get commission salespeople, people with a CFP, or even people with a CFA. What you can do is you can uh, take a quiz and get a bronze, silver, or gold medal award for the CPF board for even understanding the CPF question. I would imagine someone who has a gold medal from the CPF Olympiad will be worth quite a lot in the finance industry. So I can imagine, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. So this is my Olympiad question, and free to come up with more difficult CPF questions and put it on the comments. I do have a team of supporters and fans that I could direct the questions to, and I can tell you one or two of these guys will have an answer. Okay, even though I don't. All right, so this is my Olympiad question. You successfully set up a property pledge, and you have 106,000 in your CPF RA account. Okay, a few years later, a loved one dies, but when he dies, he directs his remaining money. He doesn't want to give it to you in the form of a cash, right? He uses the enhanced nomination scheme. So the amounts of CPF that he's transferring to you will be topped up to your retirement account first before your MediSave account, right? The question I have is, how much do you need to keep in your retirement account? Do you keep the basic retirement sum, which is about 106,500, or the CPF will top it up to the full retirement sum? So effectively, your money is stuck even though you work so hard to put up a property pledge. Okay? Yeah, I don't have an answer to this. This is the question that I came up with after I read the ebook. I was so stumped. On Saturday night, I WhatsApped Eddie Chong, the CEO of Haven, and off the top of his head, he couldn't answer as well. But I think within an hour, he was able to respond, and he believes that it is BRS. So you can take out the excess money. All right. Now, to be fair, this question is very fiddly. It's got many moving parts. I won't bind Eddie into the answer. Maybe someone from the CPF board, you stumble on my video because you might think that I'm a hater. You might help us understand and answer this question. All right. So yeah, and so that is the point. All right. I've shared with you 3 questions which I think are consequential for the listener, and finally one Olympiad level question that is highly exceptional. Okay, but it's useful as a thought experiment. So what am I really driving at, right? And this is what I'm driving at with the biggest problem with CPF. Now, the biggest problem with the CPF is that it's complicated, right? We've evolved a system that probably no one can understand thoroughly enough. And this is despite the existence of groups like Money Sense, the Institute of Financial Literacy. Okay? Now, on top of it, I've always believed, even 20 years ago, that our government's philosophy is that they want to nudge Singaporeans in a particular direction, like, for example, using default options to shape your financial and economic behavior, right? And this is a philosophy from 2 economists, right? Richard Taylor and Cass Sunstein. You can read the book to really understand how it works. But I believe that a lot of these philosopher kings, these administrative officers, they really believe in this. So to meet your KPI, I wouldn't try to convince you to take a particular course of action. What I will do is that I'll make it the default action if you don't do anything. And then after that, you take the default action. I meet my KPI. Maybe I can go to a wonderful holiday, go to the Cordon Bleu Institute and learn French cooking, with my bonus I get, right, as a super scalar kind of officer, right? Now, if you understand this, then we need to be very, very aware of what our rights are as citizens, okay? You don't want your financial choices to be the reason why someone might get a better grade, right, when they are assessed, right, at the end of the year, okay? So you need to know what are your rights. Like, for example, at the age of 55, I need to know that I don't necessarily have to put $200,000 in my CPF. If I own my home, this is the price I need to pay. This is the paperwork I need to do to leave only $100,000. An example like this, okay? Now, it gets worse when the problem is exacerbated by commissions-hungry financial institutions, right? They prefer you to be ignorant for a certain number of years. When the CPF special account shielding is in effect, a lot of these greedy financial advisors, they would use that to basically structure a solution for somebody to keep their money in the special account, right, as some sort of a high-yield savings account. In that process, these commission agents will then be able to maybe provide other forms of services to these people. For example, maybe sell insurance or sell expensive ILPs, right? And so I'm very happy, I'm a minority of people, I'm very happy that the special account shielding effect has been removed, because it no longer requires that I befriend a person who's a financial advisor before I could get the shielding in effect, right? Okay, so that's my point, right? It is complicated, and you really need to arm yourself with a lot of knowledge in order to even understand a little bit of how it works, okay? And of course, to add it in, what did my generation do when we were young, right? Instead of developing financial literacy with the help of our teachers in school, what did we do? Learn to play the recorder, right? Yeah, I know, right? There's this belief that, musicality can increase your intelligence, right? Make you a better thinker in the future. But how do you explain something like foot drill? I spent 2.5 years of my secondary school doing foot drill with the St. John's Ambulance Brigade. A thorough waste of my time. I didn't even succeed in getting a first aid certificate in that process, right? And I think that is the problem with people of our generation, right? We need to really work very hard to really develop the kind of financial literacy skills. And this is in this environment where our CPF is actually getting very complicated, right? Yeah. If somebody wants to develop a dedicated CPF course, I'm getting my ACLP. I'll be more than happy to come up with a WSQ CPF program to at least teach people the basics, right, of the Central Provident Fund. All right, which is why it is so important to download and read the CPF Playbook. This is free, okay? The book is being updated and amended as we speak, because I think there might be tiny little errors in the book, okay, and there are clarifications. And more importantly, right, as the CPF were to update their policies, I'm not too sure whether Haven would have the amount of bandwidth to keep this book updated. Okay? It is very rare for the private sector to step into CPF education. It is a little bit shameful, personally. Okay, but I hope that you guys will support this grassroots effort. Right? Let's not be cynical. All right? Our CPF program is ultimately a very good one. It is number 5 in the world, but please put in effort to learn about how it works. And even for someone like me that actually I conduct a course in CPF, I realized that the playbook has revealed so many mistakes in my own personal planning. Okay? In the beginning of a year, my mom had a stroke. She got hospitalized. And what I did was, when I got the medical bill was taken away from my CPF MediSave, $12,000. And without hesitation, I replenished the $12,000 using the dividends I received from the stock market. And that turned out to be a mistake, because according to the CPF Playbook, if you were to top up more than $8,000 into your MediSave account, it is wasted. It doesn't attract any tax benefits from doing so. So I would have been wiser to just put $8,000, and then the following year, January the 1st, I put in another $8,000 into my MediSave account, right? And so even if it is an expert, if you read the CPF playbook, you will learn to wise up a little bit on how you manage your financial affairs. And the truth is that ignorance can be very, very expensive. That $4,000, which I did not top up, it could have gotten me a Nintendo Switch 2, a PlayStation, and maybe enough games to last me 2 to 3 months. Okay? Alright, and that's all I have for you. I hope you enjoyed this. It's a little bit of a tirade, okay? Alright, let's not be too negative at the end of the day, okay? I think we're all Singapore citizens. We are concerned about our CPF program. Okay, if you like my material, subscribe to my channel. You can buy me a coffee at this link. And if you want to listen to my life story of how I gained my financial independence, Google ERM intro, you take the first link. And that's all I have for you. We're back to ordinary programming next week. Thank you very much.